My son shoved me into the lake, telling me to cool off, old man. He laughed as I choked on water as if it were a joke. But as I climbed onto the shore, shivering and soaked, I pulled out my phone and showed him something that made his smile vanish instantly. The betrayal had become justice, and the consequences for him would be devastating. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The medical bill trembled in my hands. It was for $3,000 for last month's emergency room visit. At 70, these numbers hit differently. The kitchen felt small, with morning light filtering through Margaret's yellow curtains, highlighting every dust mote. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9:30 a.m. when the old rotary phone rang. The caller ID showed Brandon's number, which made me pause. My son rarely called before noon. Dad. His voice had that artificial brightness I'd come to recognize. Listen, we should, spend some time together at the lake today. I set the bill aside, studying my reflection in the toaster. What exactly do you want to discuss, son? Better face-to-face family time, you understand? Traffic sounds buzzed through the phone. He was calling from his car. Bring swim trunks. We'll make it fun. The kids are excited. Something in his rushed breathing made my chest tighten. Brandon, what's this really about? Dad, please. Just can you meet us at Lake Harmony around noon? I walked into the living room and picked up a framed photo of Brandon at 10 years old, a gap-toothed grin, holding a fish we'd caught together. When had that earnest boy become this stranger who asked about property values and retirement plans in conversations that felt like interviews? You've been different lately, I said, settling into Margaret's chair. Those questions about the house, about my finances. I'm just concerned about your future, Dad. We all are. The word, concerned, hung between us like smoke. Concerned about what? I'd been managing fine since Margaret passed. Better than fine. I'd been careful, responsible, the way she taught me. Noon then, I heard myself say, but, Brandon, whatever this is about, we'll handle it together like family should. The line went quiet except for the hum of his engine. Thanks, Dad. That means everything. After he hung up, I sat holding the phone, listening to the dial tone. Thanks for what? The question followed me to the hallway closet where my old leather jacket waited. Margaret had bought it for my 60th birthday, saying it made me look distinguished. I grabbed my keys, their weight reassuring. Through the front window, my neighborhood looked peaceful. Mrs. Chen was watering her roses, and the mailman was whistling his usual tune. Everything was normal, everything was safe. But my hands were shaking as I reached for the door handle. The garage door groaned open, revealing my old Ford pickup in the filtered sunlight. I stood beside it for a moment, my hands instinctively checking the oil dipstick and testing the tire pressure with my boot. Margaret would have called them delay tactics. Ways of avoiding what I already knew was coming. 27 years of marriage teaches you to read the signs. 37 years of fatherhood teaches you to read between the lines. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, each step creaking. The swim trunks were in the bottom drawer of my dresser. As I lifted them, something crinkled, an old photograph. It was from Lake Harmony, the summer of 2019. Brandon's arm was around Isabel, both kids splashing while I grilled burgers, before Isabel started avoiding my calls, before Brandon's business troubles. That awkward dinner 3 weeks ago flashed through my mind. Dad, have you ever thought about estate planning? I mean, really thought about it? The way his eyes wouldn't meet mine, the nervous laugh when I mentioned my financial advisor that I walked to the bathroom, shook my morning pills into my palm, heart medication, blood pressure pills, daily reminders that 70 wasn't 50. In the mirror, worry lines creased my forehead. Gray stubble made me look older, more vulnerable than I felt. Was I overreacting? Reading too much into an invitation to spend time with family? But Margaret's voice whispered in my memory, trust your instincts, Derek. They've never steered you wrong. Back in the garage, I packed a small cooler with water bottles and granola bars. My phone vibrated with a text from Brandon. See you soon, Dit. Thanks. There it was again. Thanks. Not looking forward to seeing you, or drive safely. Thanks. As if I was doing him a favor. as if I was solving a problem I didn't even know existed yet. I grabbed the car charger. Something told me I might need it later. The house key felt heavier than usual as I locked the door. I stood on the porch, looking back at the home Margaret and I had built together. Every room held memories. Why did it feel like I might not see it the same way when I returned? I backed out of the driveway slowly, watching my house shrink in the rearview mirror. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The engine hummed its familiar tune, but today, even that comfort felt hollow. Whatever waited for me at Lake Harmony, I was driving toward it with my eyes wide open. The drive took exactly 40 minutes. Lake Harmony appeared through the trees like a painting, blue water reflecting the July sky. Brandon's newer SUV was in the parking area. I parked beside it, noting the car seats and scattered toys. Normal family chaos. For a moment, my worry eased. How serious could any problem be with juice boxes and coloring books around? Grandpa! Emma's voice cut through the air. 8 years old and pure energy, she sprinted toward me with James close behind. I caught her in a bear hug. Easy there, sweetheart. You'll make your old grandpa dizzy. James crashed into my legs. Can we go swimming now? Mom packed our suits and everything. After we eat lunch, buddy. Patience. I ruffled his dark hair, so much like Brandon's. Good things come to those who wait. Over their heads, I watched Brandon and Isabel approach. Isabel looked thin, her smile forced. She avoided my eyes. Brandon's shoulders were tight, one hand constantly checking his phone. Dad, thanks for coming. Really? He clapped me on the shoulder, but the gesture felt rehearsed. Beautiful day, isn't it? It is. I studied his face, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the way his jaw clenched. How's business, son? You know how it is. His laugh sounded hollow. Hey kids, why don't you go throw the frisbee over by those trees? Grown-ups need to chat for a bit. Emma pouted. But we just got here. Go on, Isabel said softly. We won't be long. I watched my grandchildren trudge away, their excitement dimmed by adult tension. Emma kept looking back at us, her intuition picking up what the adults were trying to hide. That we settled onto the weathered picnic bench. The lake lapped gently against the shore. Pine scent mixed with the earthy smell of the water. Sounds of children playing in the distance. It should have been peaceful, but it felt like the calm before a storm. Brandon cleared his throat. Isabel twisted a napkin until it tore. Dad, Brandon began, his voice carrying a weight I'd never heard before. We need to talk. I sat between them, feeling the warmth of the sun and the chill of something I couldn't yet name. The lake stretched out peacefully, while whatever words Brandon was gathering threatened to change everything. Emma's laughter echoed as she chased the frisbee. Innocent joy, untouched by the storm about to break. I folded my hands on the table and waited. Dad, you know how real estate markets are these days. Brandon's voice carried that rehearsed casualness I'd heard him use with clients. He watched the kids to ensure they were out of earshot. Your house has appreciated significantly. I shifted on the bench. Isabel twisted a paper napkin until it shredded. Her silence spoke louder than words. What exactly is this business opportunity, son? I kept my voice level. And why the sudden urgency? Brandon's palms left damp prints on the table as he leaned forward. Well, you see, there's this cash flow situation. Temporary, of course, but the timing is critical. And your house, it's just sitting there, all that equity, doing nothing. His calculated approach hit me like cold water. He had rehearsed this. I've lived in that house for 40 years, I said quietly. Your mother and I raised you there. Her garden is still blooming. But Dad, think practically. His voice rose. You're rattling around in all that space. Maintenance costs, property taxes. It's become a burden, hasn't it? I studied his face, the dark circles, the clenched jaw. How much money are we talking about, Brandon? And what happens if this opportunity doesn't pan out? His answers came too quickly, contradicting each other. The timeline shifted from months to weeks to immediately. The amounts grew vague. Isabel closed her eyes briefly as if in pain. When she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. Where would I live? I asked. For the first time, Isabel spoke, her voice a whisper. We've looked at our budget. There's room for you with us. The kids would love having Grandpa around. The coordination struck me like a blow. They had planned this without me. The children were being used as emotional leverage. Brandon, I said, my voice gaining strength. What aren't you telling me? What's really happening here? His mask began to slip. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Dad, you don't understand. This isn't just about opportunity anymore. There are people involved. Commitments made. What kind of commitments? The kind that don't wait for convenient timing. My paternal instincts clashed with a growing alarm. 40 years of reading my son's face told me he was genuinely frightened. But 40 years of being his father also told me he was trying to drag me down with him. No, I said firmly. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Brandon's face transformed. The mask of a reasonable man crumbled, revealing something desperate and dangerous. I stood from the bench, speaking with the dignity of 7 decades of hard-earned wisdom. That house means everything to me, son. It's where your mother took her last breath. I won't sell our family's heart for someone else's emergency. Instead of understanding, Brandon shot up from the bench, his chair scraping against the concrete. He paced like a caged animal, his voice rising toward hysteria. You stubborn old fool. Don't you get it? This isn't optional anymore. He gestured wildly. You think this is about wanting money? You think I have choices here? Isabel grabbed his arm, a warning gesture he shook off violently that I watched my son unravel. Brandon, what are you so afraid of? He stepped closer, using his height to tower over me. At 70, I was slightly stooped. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The kind of people who don't accept excuses. My hand moved instinctively to my phone. Let me call Richard Wilson. He can give us legal advice about. No lawyers. Brandon's shout echoed across the water. No outside help. This gets handled family style, or it doesn't get handled at all. I started the video recording while pretending to dial, holding the phone naturally. The red dot appeared just as Brandon's control snapped completely. Cool off, old man. He grabbed my shoulders, his fingers digging in. Maybe a reality check will help you think straight. The shove came without warning. 40 years younger, 40 pounds heavier, and fueled by desperation, Brandon pushed me backward. My aging reflexes couldn't compensate. The cold shock of Lake Harmony hit me. Water rushed into my nose and mouth. The temperature difference made my heart stutter. My soaked clothes became anchors. I flailed toward the surface, gasping, my phone held instinctively above my head. The water was shallow enough that I wasn't drowning, but deep enough to be dangerous. Hypothermia could set in quickly. Instead of helping, Brandon stood at the water's edge and laughed. Maybe now you'll think straight instead of being sentimental about some old house. His voice was sharp with mockery. Isabel remained frozen, her hands pressed to her mouth, paralyzed between loyalty to her husband and revulsion at his actions. The children's laughter continued, masking the confrontation that I found my balance, water streaming from my clothes, and looked up at my son with dawning realization. I waded toward the shore with deliberate calm. Each step was purposeful, my movements controlled by a cold clarity. Brandon and Isabel watched uncertainly. My silence unnerved them more than any outburst. I walked past Brandon without a word, heading toward the parking lot. Dad, come on. Let's talk about this like reasonable people. Still, I said nothing. Isabel followed at a distance. When I reached my truck, I turned to face Brandon, who had hurried after me. I calmly held up my phone, showing him the video recording in progress. Brandon's face transformed to absolute horror. You recorded that? You recorded our private family conversation? I recorded everything, Brandon. My voice carried the temperature of the lake water. Every word you said, every action you took, every moment you assaulted your 70-year-old father. He lunged for the phone, but I stepped back smoothly. Touch me again, and this video goes directly to the Minneapolis Police Department. I know exactly which laws you've broken today. His aggression collapsed into panic. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The kind of people who will hurt my family if I don't. I understand assault when I see it, I interrupted. And elder abuse. The state of Minnesota takes both very seriously, especially with clear video evidence. Brandon's voice cracked. You can't seriously be thinking of calling the police on your own son, your grandchildren's father. I open my car door. I'm thinking of protecting myself from someone who just proved he's willing to use violence against his own family for money. Isabel remained silent, understanding we had crossed a line. Brandon, you'll be hearing from my attorney. This video will be evidence in whatever legal proceedings follow. I suggest you use whatever time you have left to figure out how to explain this to Emma and James. I slid into the driver's seat and drove away slowly. I watched in my rearview mirror as Brandon and Isabel shrank to distant figures, standing amid the ruins of what had once been a family gathering. The lakes sparkled peacefully, while their destroyed world reflected nothing but the consequences of greed and desperation. The weight of it all hadn't fully hit me, but I had evidence. I had witnesses. I had the power to ensure that violence would never again be used against me in the name of family loyalty. My hands shook slightly as I drove away, the heater blasting against my soaked clothes. The radio played an oldie, Sweet Caroline, the same song Brandon used to sing along to as a child. Muscle memory made me pull over at the familiar oak tree 30 minutes into the drive. This old giant had witnessed our best father-son moments. Here, I taught Brandon to tie fishing knots. Here, we'd shared peanut butter sandwiches. I sat beneath those sprawling branches, my wet clothes still clinging, and pulled out my wallet. Behind my driver's license, I kept an old photograph. Brandon at 10 years old, a gap-toothed smile, holding up his first caught fish. The contrast hit me. That loving child who cried when he accidentally stepped on a butterfly had pushed his 70-year-old father into a lake today. The boy who used to fall asleep holding my hand had threatened me for refusing to sell my house. Where had I gone wrong? How do you grieve someone who is still alive but lost to you? I whispered to the oak tree. The same question Margaret had asked about her estranged sister. Every memory felt contaminated now. Had any of those moments been real, or had I been fooling myself about who my son truly was? The phone buzzed insistently. I didn't read the message yet, but its presence reminded me this wasn't just nostalgic grief. This was a crisis requiring immediate decisions. I folded the photograph and placed it back in my wallet. The boy in that picture deserved to be remembered, even if the man he'd become had chosen a different path. Starting the engine, I pulled back onto the highway toward home. Whatever message waited on my phone, whatever consequences followed, I would face them as the same man who had raised a child with infinite patience and love. Even if that child had forgotten how to return it, the house felt different when I arrived. Safe but hollow. I dropped my wet clothes into the washing machine and stood under the hottest shower I could tolerate. The heat couldn't reach the cold that had settled in my chest. I prepared a simple dinner, but my appetite had disappeared somewhere between my son's first threat and his final shove into the lake. At 70, stress affected me differently. Everything felt more consequential. Evening light filtered through Margaret's curtains as I settled into her favorite chair, surrounded by family photo albums. Every picture of Brandon now demanded re-examination. Had I been blind to the warning signs, I decided to wait until morning to call Richard Wilson, my lawyer friend. Legal action against your own son required careful thought. The video evidence wasn't going anywhere. At 9:30 p.m., my phone chimed. The sender's name made me pause, Isabel. She had my number from the emergency contact list at the kids' school. Her message was longer than usual, emotional urgency evident. Derek, I'm so sorry about today. Brandon is under enormous pressure from dangerous people. They're threatening him, threatening us all. Can we meet tomorrow? Just us. He doesn't know I'm contacting you. Please. I read the message 3 times, processing the implications. Dangerous people, threats. Isabel reaching out secretly. My paternal instincts warred with the memory of her silent complicity. But perhaps she'd been trapped between loyalty to her husband and fear of something worse. The mention of threats against us all sent ice through my veins. Did that include Emma and James? Were my grandchildren in actual danger? I composed my response carefully. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Cozy Corner Cafe on Main Street. Come alone. Her reply came within minutes. Thank you. I'll explain everything. Setting the phone aside, I double-checked the door locks. Tomorrow's meeting would either clarify misunderstandings or confirm my worst fears. I arrived at Cozy Corner Cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. The morning crowd offered perfect cover. I reviewed yesterday's video one last time, steeling myself for whatever revelations awaited. Isabel entered precisely at 10 o'clock, wearing sunglasses despite the cloudy morning and a light scarf around her neck. Her movements were cautious. When she removed her sunglasses, I saw exhaustion on her face. Her hands trembled. I'm so sorry about yesterday, she began, her voice a whisper. What Brandon did was inexcusable. But Derek, you need to understand the pressure he's been under. What kind of pressure makes a man assault his own father? I kept my voice level. Isabel glanced around nervously. 6 months ago, Brandon borrowed money for what he thought was a legitimate business expansion. The people seemed professional, but the terms kept changing. Interest rates climbing, penalties appearing from nowhere. She pushed up her sleeves slightly, revealing purple bruises around her wrists. These aren't from Brandon. They're from visitors who came to our house last week. They wanted to make sure I understood how serious their business relationship had become. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. They threatened you in your own home? They took photos of Emma and James walking to school. Showed me the pictures as proof of how easily they could reach our children. Isabel's voice broke. That's when I knew this had moved beyond money into something much more dangerous. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Brandon's desperation wasn't greed, it was terror. How much does he owe them? It started at $50,000. With interest and penalties, it's grown to nearly $200,000. They want payment by the end of this week or they move from threats to action. Isabel leaned forward. I contacted you because I don't know how else to protect Emma and James. Brandon's pride won't let him ask for help. But these people, they're not going to wait. I studied her face, seeing genuine fear. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Brandon made me promise. He said involving you would only make things worse, put more family members at risk. But after yesterday, I realized staying silent was protecting no one. The full scope of the crisis settled over me. This wasn't just family dysfunction. It was my grandchildren's lives hanging in the balance, caught between their father's criminal entanglements and dangerous people who had already demonstrated their reach. These people who threatened you. Did you see faces? Get names? Isabel shook her head. They were very careful. Professional in the worst possible way. I sat back, processing information that transformed yesterday's betrayal into today's emergency. My son hadn't just assaulted me, he'd been trying to save his children. The question,